Every year, nearly 20 people disappear from cruise ships, and most of these cases are never solved. Today, we are diving into 7 of the most chilling and unexplained disappearances that left investigators baffled, families heartbroken, and the world asking one haunting question: what really happened out there? Welcome back to the channel. Before we begin, make sure you hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications, because we cover the most fascinating unsolved mysteries every single week. Today's topic is particularly unsettling because it deals with something millions of people do every year: taking a cruise vacation. We think of cruises as safe, luxurious getaways where we can relax and disconnect from the world. But what happens when that disconnection becomes permanent? Cruise ships are like floating cities. Some of them carry more than 6,000 passengers and 2,000 crew members. They have restaurants, theaters, shops, pools, and entertainment venues that rival any resort on land. But there's one critical difference. Once you're out in international waters, you're in a legal gray zone. Jurisdiction becomes complicated, investigations become difficult, and if something goes wrong, if someone disappears, the vast emptiness of the ocean can swallow evidence, witnesses, and truth itself. The statistics are sobering. According to industry data and maritime records, an average of 20 to 25 people go missing from cruise ships every single year. Some of these are accidents, some are suicides, some are explained by medical emergencies or intentional decisions to disappear, but a troubling number remain completely unexplained. No body, no witnesses, no logical explanation, just an empty cabin and a family back home wondering what could have possibly happened. What makes these cases so particularly haunting is the controlled environment. A cruise ship isn't the open wilderness where someone can wander off and get lost. It's a confined space surrounded by ocean. There are security cameras in hallways, there are crew members everywhere, there are passenger manifests and keycard systems that track when people enter and exit their rooms. And yet, despite all of this surveillance and control, people still manage to vanish without a trace. Today, we're going to explore 7 of the most baffling cruise ship mysteries that remain unsolved. These cases span different cruise lines, different parts of the world, and different types of passengers, but they all share one common thread. Nobody knows what really happened. As we go through each case, I want you to think about what you would do in that situation. Think about the families who are still searching for answers, and think about the uncomfortable questions these mysteries raise about safety, security, and accountability on the high seas. Let's start with a case that shocked the cruising world and raised serious questions about how disappearances are handled when they happen in the middle of the ocean. Mystery 1: the honeymoon vanishing. Our first case takes us back to a voyage that should have been one of the happiest times in a young couple's life. We're talking about a honeymoon cruise, a celebration of new love and new beginnings. But what started as a dream vacation turned into a nightmare that has never been resolved. The couple we're discussing had just gotten married after dating for 3 years. They were both in their late 20s, successful in their careers, and excited about their future together. For their honeymoon, they chose a 14-day cruise through the Caribbean, stopping at exotic ports and enjoying everything the ship had to offer. The first week of the cruise was apparently perfect. The couple was seen at dinners, shows, and excursions. They posted photos on social media showing them smiling on beaches, swimming with dolphins, and enjoying romantic sunsets from their balcony cabin. Other passengers who met them said they seemed happy, affectionate, and excited about their trip. There were no signs of trouble, no arguments, no indication that anything was wrong. Then, on day 9 of the cruise, something changed. The couple didn't show up for breakfast, which wasn't unusual for honeymooners who might want to sleep in. They didn't appear at lunch either. By dinner time, when they had reservations at the ship's specialty restaurant and didn't show up, the staff started to become concerned. The restaurant manager tried calling their cabin. No answer. He sent someone to knock on the door. No response. When security finally opened the cabin using a master key, they found something deeply disturbing. The husband was alone in the room, appearing disoriented and confused. When asked where his wife was, he seemed unable to provide a clear answer. His responses were vague and contradictory. He said she might have gone to get breakfast, then he said she might be at the spa, then he said he didn't remember. He seemed genuinely confused, but that confusion only made the situation more alarming. The ship's security immediately launched a search. They checked every public area, every deck, every restaurant and bar. They made announcements over the intercom asking the missing woman to contact guest services. They reviewed security camera footage, and this is where the case takes its first truly mysterious turn. The cameras showed the wife leaving the cabin alone early in the morning, around 6 a.m., wearing casual clothes and sunglasses. She walked down the hallway, entered an elevator, and went up to one of the upper decks. Then, she simply disappeared from camera coverage. The ship has cameras in hallways and some public spaces, but not everywhere. There are blind spots. The railings along the outer decks don't have cameras monitoring them. The cameras that do exist don't cover every angle. So while they could track her movements to a certain point, they lost her somewhere on the upper deck in the early morning hours when very few other passengers were awake. The ship turned around and began retracing its route, searching the water for any sign of her. They contacted the Coast Guard. Other ships in the area were alerted to keep watch. For hours, the crew and passengers scanned the horizon, hoping to see something, anything that might indicate what happened. But the ocean revealed nothing. No life jacket deployment, no distress call, no body. She had simply vanished. Meanwhile, the husband's behavior continued to raise questions. He seemed genuinely distraught, crying and calling her name. But he also couldn't provide a coherent timeline of the previous night and early morning. He said they had gone to bed together around midnight after having drinks at one of the ship's bars. He said he woke up around 10 a.m. and assumed she had gone out while he slept, but there were gaps in his story that didn't quite make sense. Other passengers who had seen the couple the night before reported that they seemed fine, perhaps a little drunk, but happy and affectionate. Nobody reported hearing an argument from their cabin. Nobody saw anything suspicious. The last confirmed sighting of the couple together was around 11:30 p.m. when they were seen entering their cabin with the husband's arm around his wife's shoulders. The family of the missing woman refused to accept the accident theory. They pointed out that their daughter was afraid of heights and always uncomfortable near railings on high places. They said she would never lean over a ship's railing, especially not alone in the dark. They also raised concerns about the husband, noting that the marriage had been rushed and that there had been some tension over finances and family issues. But without evidence, these suspicions remained just that, suspicions. As weeks turned into months, the investigation stalled. The cruise line cooperated with authorities but maintained that they had followed all proper procedures. The FBI, which has jurisdiction over crimes on American-flagged vessels, reviewed the case but found insufficient evidence to bring charges against anyone. The surveillance footage, which was supposed to provide answers, only deepened the mystery. It showed a woman walking alone on a ship in the early morning hours and then disappearing, as if she had simply evaporated into the ocean air. The husband eventually stopped speaking to media and retreated from public view. The family of the missing woman continues to search for answers, but with each passing year, those answers seem more and more unlikely to ever come. The case remains officially open, but unsolved. And it raises disturbing questions about what really happens on cruise ships when the sun goes down and most passengers are asleep. This case is particularly troubling because it seems like there should be answers. It happened on a ship with security cameras and thousands of potential witnesses. It happened in a confined environment where someone can't just disappear into a forest or a city. And yet, despite all the technology and all the people, a woman vanished without a trace, leaving behind a husband who claims to know nothing and a family that may never find closure. But this is just the first of our 7 mysteries. And as disturbing as this case is, the next one involves circumstances that are even more bizarre and unsettling. Mystery 2, the Midnight Photographer. Our second mystery takes us to a different kind of disappearance, one that involves a solo traveler, which adds another layer of complexity to an already confusing case. This victim was a 42-year-old professional photographer who had decided to take a cruise alone after going through a difficult divorce. Friends said he needed time to clear his head and rediscover his passion for photography, and a cruise through the Mediterranean seemed like the perfect opportunity. This wasn't his first solo trip. He was an experienced traveler who had been to dozens of countries and was comfortable navigating unfamiliar places alone. He was also responsible and reliable, the kind of person who always checked in with family and friends and never caused anyone to worry. His ex-wife, with whom he maintained a friendly relationship, said he was excited about the trip and planned to use it as inspiration for a new photography project focusing on seascapes and maritime life. The cruise departed from Barcelona and was scheduled to make stops in France, Italy, and Greece over 10 days. For the first 5 days, everything seemed normal. The photographer was seen at various times around the ship, usually with his camera, capturing images of the sea, the sunsets, and the ship itself. He ate meals alone, which wasn't unusual for a solo traveler. He seemed content and focused on his photography. Several crew members remembered him because he would ask permission to access certain areas of the ship to get better angles for his shots. On the 6th day, the ship docked in Santorini, and the photographer disembarked for an excursion. Security footage shows him leaving the ship around 9 a.m. with his camera bag and returning around 6 p.m. right before the ship was scheduled to depart. He appeared normal, walking up the gangway with his camera bag over his shoulder, showing his keycard to security and heading inside. That was the last confirmed sighting of him alive. He didn't show up for dinner that evening, but again, this wasn't immediately alarming for a solo traveler who might have eaten a large lunch or preferred to order room service. It wasn't until the next day, when the ship docked in Athens, that concerns began to arise. The photographer had signed up for another shore excursion, a photography tour of ancient ruins. When he didn't show up at the meeting point and didn't answer calls to his cabin, the excursion coordinator reported it to guest services. Security went to his cabin and found the door locked from the inside. This is a crucial detail. The door was locked from the inside, which typically requires someone to be in the room. They knocked and called out, but got no response. Using their master key, they opened the door and found the cabin empty. The photographer was gone, but all of his belongings were still there. His clothes were hung in the closet, his toiletries were in the bathroom, his laptop was on the desk, closed but plugged in, and most notably, his camera bag was sitting on the bed unopened since he had returned from the Santorini excursion. This detail struck investigators as particularly odd. Why would a professional photographer, someone who lived and breathed his craft, not immediately review the photos from an excursion? Every photographer knows the anxiety of wanting to check your shots as soon as possible to make sure you captured what you intended. Yet his camera bag sat untouched, and when investigators later examined the camera, they found hundreds of photos from Santorini that had never been viewed. The ship's security reviewed camera footage from the previous evening and night. The footage showed the photographer returning to his cabin around 6:15 p.m. For the next several hours, no camera captured him leaving his cabin. The hallway camera that would have recorded anyone exiting his door showed no activity from his cabin until security arrived the next day. So how did he leave? How could he get out of his locked cabin without appearing on any security footage?
The laptop examination also revealed something else. The photographer had been working on a project documenting maritime shipping routes and commercial vessel traffic in the Mediterranean. He had folders full of photos of cargo ships, tankers, and commercial vessels. He had notes about shipping lanes and times when certain types of ships passed through certain areas. To investigators, this seemed like nothing more than an interesting photography project, but to his family, it raised questions. Why was he so interested in commercial shipping? Was there something about this project that might have put him in danger? These line of thinking might seem like a stretch, but in the world of unsolved mysteries, you have to consider every possibility. Could he have witnessed something he wasn't supposed to see? Could his photographing of certain ships have attracted unwanted attention? Could someone on the ship have seen his photos and decided he was a threat? These theories border on conspiracy, but when someone disappears from a locked room with no trace, you start to consider scenarios that would normally seem far-fetched. The cruise line conducted a full search of the ship. They checked every storage area, every crew space, every possible location where someone could be hiding or where a body could be concealed. They found nothing. They reviewed footage from every camera on the ship, looking for any moment where he might appear. Nothing. They interviewed crew members and passengers who might have seen or heard something. Nobody reported anything unusual. The ship eventually continued its journey, and when it returned to Barcelona, authorities conducted a more thorough investigation. They brought in dogs trained to detect human remains. They inspected areas of the ship that are normally off-limits to passengers. They examined the plumbing and ventilation systems. They were looking for any evidence that something violent had happened, that someone had disposed of a body. But after days of searching, they found absolutely nothing. The case remains unsolved to this day. The photographer's family hired private investigators who reviewed all the evidence and came to no conclusions. The theory they lean toward is that somehow, for reasons unknown, he went overboard from his balcony. But they acknowledge that this theory doesn't explain all the facts, particularly the locked door, the untouched camera bag, and the complete absence of him on any security footage after returning to his cabin. This case demonstrates one of the fundamental problems with cruise ship investigations. Ships are complex environments with thousands of people coming and going. They have security systems, but those systems aren't perfect. There are blind spots. There are areas without cameras. And once you're in international waters, the legal framework for investigation becomes complicated. Different countries have jurisdiction at different times depending on where the ship is located. Evidence collection protocols vary, and by the time serious investigators can board the ship, critical time has passed and evidence may have been contaminated or lost. For the family of the missing photographer, these complications are cold comfort. Their loved one boarded a ship and never came back. And years later, they still have no idea why. His camera, which captured thousands of images during his life, captured nothing that explains his disappearance. And somewhere in the Mediterranean, the ocean keeps whatever secrets it holds about what really happened on that night. But as mysterious as these first two cases are, our next case involves multiple disappearances on a single voyage, a situation that pushed the boundaries of coincidence and raised serious questions about what was really happening on one particular ship. Mystery 3: The Unlucky Cruise. What happens when more than one person disappears from the same cruise in the span of just a few days? Is it coincidence? Is it a series of unrelated tragedies? Or is something more sinister at play? Our third mystery involves a 7-day cruise where 3 different passengers vanished under different circumstances, creating one of the most investigated and controversial cases in recent cruise ship history. The voyage in question was a standard Caribbean cruise departing from Miami. It was during peak season, and the ship was at full capacity with over 4,000 passengers and nearly 2,000 crew members. The passengers came from all over the world, representing dozens of nationalities and age groups. It was supposed to be a typical fun-in-the-sun vacation, but it turned into something that cruise industry executives still don't like to talk about. The first disappearance happened on the second night of the cruise. The victim was a 68-year-old retired teacher traveling with his wife of 40 years. They had been on cruises before and were experienced travelers. On the second evening, they attended a show in the ship's theater, had dinner at the buffet, and then decided to take a walk around the deck before bed. This was their routine. They enjoyed the night air and the sound of the ocean. According to his wife, they were walking together on the promenade deck when he said he needed to use the restroom. He told her to keep walking and that he would catch up with her. She continued along the deck, expecting him to rejoin her in a few minutes. When he didn't appear after 10 minutes, she walked back to the restroom to check on him. He wasn't there. She waited outside, thinking maybe he had stopped to look at something or talk to someone. After 20 minutes, she started to worry and contacted ship security. Security reviewed the cameras and found footage of the man entering the restroom but never exiting. They searched the restroom thoroughly. They searched nearby areas. They made announcements. As hours passed without finding him, they launched a full ship search and eventually had to consider the possibility that he had gone overboard. But how? He had entered a restroom on an interior deck, not near any railings or open areas. To get to a point where he could fall or jump overboard, he would have had to leave the restroom, walk through multiple areas, and go out to an exterior deck. Yet, no cameras captured him doing any of this. The search for him continued for the next day while the ship proceeded with its itinerary. Passengers were questioned, crew members who had been in that area were interviewed. The ship was searched from top to bottom. Nothing. It was as if he had entered that restroom and stepped into another dimension. His wife was devastated and completely baffled. She insisted that he had no reason to harm himself, no history of wandering or confusion, no medical conditions that would cause disorientation. He simply needed to use the restroom and never returned. While the ship's security was still dealing with this first disappearance, still searching and investigating, a second passenger went missing on the 4th night of the cruise. This victim was a 34-year-old woman traveling alone. She was a nurse from Canada who had decided to take a solo vacation. She had been seen at dinner with a group of other solo travelers, a group that had formed organically over the first few days of the cruise. According to the others in the group, she had a few drinks but wasn't intoxicated. She seemed happy and was talking about how much she was enjoying the trip. Around 11 p.m., she said she was tired and was going back to her cabin. Security footage confirmed that she made it to her cabin that night. The hallway camera showed her entering her room around 11:20 p.m. But the next morning, when she didn't show up for a planned excursion with her new friends, they went to check on her. Her cabin door was slightly ajar, which was unusual. When they pushed it open and called her name, she wasn't there. Her bed appeared to have been slept in. Her phone was on the nightstand, plugged into a charger, but she was gone.
This time, security acted quickly. They sealed off her cabin and treated it as a crime scene. They reviewed footage from the hallways and found something disturbing. At approximately 3:30 a.m., a figure was seen exiting her cabin. The footage wasn't clear enough to make a positive identification, but the person appeared to be wearing crew member attire. They walked quickly down the hallway and disappeared around a corner. No footage showed the woman herself leaving the cabin at any point after she had entered it. Who was the person leaving her cabin at 3:30 in the morning? Was it her? Had she changed into crew clothing for some reason? Or was it someone else? If it was someone else, what were they doing in her cabin, and where was she? Security questioned crew members about who had been in that section of the ship during those hours. Several crew members had legitimate reasons to be in the area, delivering room service, performing maintenance, conducting security rounds. But none of them admitted to entering that particular cabin. The ship's command made the decision to turn around and search the route for any sign of the missing woman. By this point, with 2 disappearances in just a few days, passengers were starting to panic. Rumors spread throughout the ship. Some people said there was a murderer on board. Others talked about a curse. The mood on what was supposed to be a fun vacation had turned dark and fearful. Many passengers stayed in their cabins, afraid to walk the decks at night. The cruise line tried to maintain calm, insisting that they were doing everything possible to investigate. But the trust was broken. And then came the 3rd disappearance. On the 6th night, just 1 night before the cruise was scheduled to end, a 26-year-old man vanished. He was traveling with a group of friends, all recent college graduates celebrating one of their weddings. They had been drinking and partying, enjoying the nightlife on the ship. Around 2 a.m., the group decided to call it a night. Everyone went back to their respective cabins. The missing man's roommate, his friend since childhood, said goodnight and went to bed. When the roommate woke up the next morning, his friend wasn't in the cabin. At first, he assumed his friend had gotten up early or maybe had hooked up with someone he met at the bar. But as the morning progressed and his friend didn't answer his phone, didn't respond to texts, and didn't show up for their planned final day activities, he became concerned. He contacted the rest of their group. Nobody had seen him since they said goodnight. That's when they reported him missing. By this point, the ship was in a state of chaos. 3 disappearances in 1 week. Security was overwhelmed. Passengers were frightened. The cruise line was dealing with a public relations nightmare. Authorities were preparing to board the ship as soon as it docked. The captain made the unprecedented decision to lock down the ship, meaning no passengers or crew could disembark when they reached port until investigators had a chance to interview everyone and search thoroughly. When the ship finally docked and investigators boarded, they conducted one of the most extensive cruise ship investigations ever undertaken. Every passenger and crew member was interviewed. Every cabin was searched. Dogs were brought in to search for any sign of human remains. Forensic teams examined the 3 cabins associated with the disappearances, looking for evidence of foul play. The ship's entire security camera archive was copied and analyzed frame by experts. The investigation lasted for weeks, and after all that work, the conclusions were frustratingly vague. There was no physical evidence of violence or foul play in any of the cabins. There was no blood, no signs of struggle, no murder weapons. The person seen leaving the nurse's cabin at 3:30 a.m. was never identified. Security footage showed no clear evidence of any of the 3 victims going overboard, but absence of evidence isn't evidence of absence. The cameras don't cover every part of the ship. Theories abounded. Some investigators believed all 3 disappearances were unrelated coincidences, as unlikely as that seemed. Maybe the elderly man had become disoriented and somehow fell overboard. Maybe the nurse had sleepwalked or been intoxicated more than her friends realized. Maybe the young man had made a drunken mistake and fallen from a balcony. It's possible that 3 separate tragedies could occur on one cruise, each with its own explanation. But other investigators weren't satisfied with the coincidence theory.
They pointed to patterns. All 3 disappearances happened at night. All 3 victims were alone when they vanished, even if only briefly. All 3 cases had odd elements that didn't quite fit the accident or suicide narrative. They theorized that someone on that ship, either a passenger or crew member, had been responsible for all 3 disappearances. But without bodies, without witnesses, without physical evidence, they couldn't prove anything. The families of the missing 3 formed a support group and hired attorneys to pressure the cruise line and law enforcement for answers. They commissioned independent investigations. They offered rewards for information. But years later, none of the 3 have ever been found. No bodies have washed ashore. No additional evidence has emerged. The case remains open but cold, and the ship involved, while still in operation, has a reputation that it will probably never shake. Our next case takes us in a different direction. Instead of adult passengers, we're going to discuss a disappearance that hits particularly close to home because it involves a child. This case sparked international outrage and exposed troubling gaps in how cruise ships handle child safety. Mystery 4: The Vanished Child. Few things are more terrifying than a missing child. And when that child disappears from a cruise ship in the middle of the ocean, the horror is amplified by the setting. Our 4th mystery involves a 7-year-old girl who vanished from a family cruise, creating a case that devastated her family and shocked the world. The family in question was an ordinary middle-class family from the Midwest. Mom, dad, 2 children, taking a cruise to celebrate the mother's 40th birthday. They had saved for 2 years for this trip. It was their first cruise, and they were excited about spending quality time together away from the distractions of everyday life. Their daughter, the one who would soon disappear, was described by everyone as a bright, happy, outgoing child. She loved swimming, loved princesses, loved making new friends. Her parents were attentive and cautious, the kind of parents who always knew where their children were. The cruise was family-friendly, with kids' clubs, activities, and entertainment designed for children. The ship had hundreds of families on board, and the atmosphere was festive and safe-feeling. On the 3rd day of the cruise, the family spent the afternoon at the ship's main pool area. There were multiple pools, water slides, hot tubs, and a splash pad for younger children. It was crowded, as cruise ship pools always are on sea days, with families everywhere enjoying the sun and water. According to the parents, their daughter was playing in the shallow end of one of the pools, well within their sight. The mother was sitting on a lounge chair no more than 20 feet away, reading but looking up frequently to check on her children. The father was in the pool with their 10-year-old son, also nearby. It was around 3 in the afternoon. There were lifeguards on duty. There were plenty of other families around. It should have been perfectly safe. The mother looked down at her book for what she estimates was no more than 2 or 3 minutes. When she looked up, her daughter was not in the pool. She stood up and scanned the area, figuring her daughter had gotten out to use the bathroom or get a snack. She called her name. No response. She walked around the pool area looking for her. She asked other parents if they had seen her. Nobody had noticed anything. She found her husband and told her she couldn't find her daughter. That's when the panic set in.
They immediately reported her missing to a lifeguard, who called security. Within minutes, security personnel were searching the pool area and making announcements over the intercom. The ship's protocols for a missing child are extensive. All exits are monitored. Photos of the child are distributed to all crew members. Announcements are made in multiple languages. The entire ship is searched zone by zone. This wasn't the first time a child had been reported missing on a cruise ship. Usually, the child is found quickly, often in a kids' club or another deck, having wandered off without parents noticing. But as the minutes turned into hours, it became clear that this wasn't a typical wandering child scenario. The girl was nowhere on the ship. Security reviewed footage from the pool area, and this is where the case takes its first disturbing turn. The footage showed the girl in the pool playing happily. Then she appeared to climb out of the pool on the far side, away from where her parents were sitting. She stood at the edge of the pool for a moment, dripping wet in her purple bathing suit, and then she walked away from the pool area alone. The cameras tracked her for a while. She walked past the buffet, past the ice cream station, past several adults who later said they remembered seeing a little girl but didn't think anything of it because there were children everywhere. She entered a stairwell, and that's where the camera coverage ended. The stairwell had a camera at the entrance, but not inside. She entered the stairwell and she never emerged from any of the exits. It was as if she had vanished in the stairwell itself. Security searched the stairwell extensively. It was a standard ship stairwell connecting multiple decks with doors at each level. There were no hiding places, no openings to the outside, nowhere a small child could conceivably go. But she wasn't there, and no camera on any deck showed her exiting from any of the stairwell doors. She had entered a stairwell and disappeared. As the search intensified, every scenario was considered. Could she have been taken by someone? Security reviewed footage of everyone who entered or exited that stairwell around the same time. Several people used the stairs, which was normal, but none of them appeared to be with a child or carrying anything that could conceal a child. Could she have somehow gotten outside and gone overboard? The stairwell didn't have any direct access to exterior decks, at least not in a way that a 7-year-old could manage alone. Could she have hidden somewhere and fallen asleep? They searched every possible hiding spot, called her name over and over, offered rewards for any information. The ship turned around and began retracing its path, searching the ocean in case she had somehow ended up in the water. The parents were beyond devastated. The mother kept saying she had only looked away for a moment. The father was in shock, unable to process how this could have happened in such a controlled environment. Their son was confused and scared, kept asking when his sister would come back. Coast Guard vessels joined the search. Aircraft flew over the ship's route. The media picked up the story, and soon it was international news. Millions of people around the world were following the case, hoping for a miracle. Child safety experts weighed in, discussing how children can disappear in seconds, even in crowded places. The cruise line faced intense scrutiny and criticism. How could a child vanish from their ship? Where were the security measures? Why wasn't there better camera coverage? When the ship finally docked in the next port, local authorities boarded with cadaver dogs, forensic teams, and detectives specializing in child abduction cases. They conducted a search that was even more thorough than the one security had already done. They searched crew areas, storage rooms, mechanical spaces, anywhere someone could hide or conceal a body. They questioned crew members extensively, looking for any suspicious behavior or connections to the missing girl. They examined the backgrounds of every crew member and passenger on the ship, checking for criminal records or red flags. Days passed, then weeks. The investigation generated thousands of tips from around the world. Psychics called in with visions. Conspiracy theorists posted wild theories online, but nothing led to any concrete answers. The footage of the girl entering the stairwell was analyzed by experts frame by frame. Some claimed to see a shadow that might indicate someone was following her. Others said the footage clearly showed she was alone. The truth remained elusive. One theory that gained traction was human trafficking. Cruise ships dock in multiple countries, making them potential vehicles for smuggling. Could someone have grabbed the child in the stairwell and hidden her until the ship reached a port and then smuggled her off? It sounds like something out of a movie, but child trafficking is a real and horrifying crime. Investigators took this theory seriously and coordinated with international law enforcement agencies in every country where the ship had docked. They looked at security footage from ports, looking for any sign of the girl being taken off the ship. They found nothing. Another theory was that she had somehow accessed an area of the ship that should have been locked but wasn't. Perhaps a crew door was left propped open. Perhaps she found her way into a mechanical area and had an accident. Ships are complex, with miles of passageways and spaces that passengers never see. Could she be somewhere inside the ship, in a place so remote that searchers missed it? This theory led to even more extensive searches, including bringing in ground-penetrating radar and thermal imaging equipment. But again, nothing. The most heartbreaking theory, and the one that investigators eventually concluded was most likely, was that she somehow made it to an exterior deck and went overboard. Perhaps she exited the stairwell at a level that wasn't well covered by cameras. Perhaps she was curious about the ocean and climbed on a railing. Perhaps she fell. The ocean is vast and unforgiving, and a small child would have no chance of survival. If this was what happened, the likelihood of ever recovering her was essentially zero. For the parents, no theory brought comfort. They wanted their daughter back. They wanted to know what happened. The not knowing was torture. In the years since, they've become advocates for improved cruise ship safety regulations, particularly regarding children. They've pushed for more cameras, better tracking systems, mandatory child wristbands with GPS, and stricter supervision requirements. The cruise line has implemented some changes, but resisted others, citing cost and practicality concerns. This case remains unsolved. The girl has never been found. No evidence has ever emerged that definitively explains what happened in that stairwell. Her parents still hold out hope that somehow, somewhere, she's alive. But as time passes, that hope dims. And the mystery of how a child could vanish from a crowded ship in day-bright light, disappearing into a stairwell and never emerging, continues to haunt everyone who hears the story. It's a reminder that even in places that seem safe, that feel controlled and monitored, tragedy can strike in an instant. And it's a stark illustration of how the ocean, that vast and mysterious expanse that surrounds these floating cities, can swallow people and secrets without ever giving them back. Our next case involves a different kind of victim and a different set of circumstances, but it's no less mysterious or disturbing. This time, we're talking about a crew member, someone who lived and worked on the ship, who knew its layout and procedures, and who still managed to disappear without a trace.
Mystery 5. The crew member who knew too much. When passengers disappear from cruise ships, it makes headlines. But when crew members vanish, the story often stays quiet, buried under corporate policies and maritime law complexities. Our fifth mystery involves a crew member whose disappearance raised questions not just about what happened to him, but about what he might have known and whether that knowledge made him a target. The crew member in question was a 31-year-old man from the Philippines, one of tens of thousands of Filipino workers who make up a large portion of cruise ship crews worldwide. He had been working on cruise ships for 8 years, starting as a dishwasher and working his way up to a position in the ship's operations department. He was known as reliable, hardworking, and quiet. He sent money home to his family every month and was saving to buy a house in his hometown. By all accounts, he was exactly the kind of employee cruise lines value. He worked on a mega ship, one of the largest in the world, with nearly 7,000 passengers and over 2,000 crew members. The ship ran year-round Caribbean routes, docking in Miami and visiting the same islands week after week. For crew members, this kind of routine can be monotonous, but it also creates a sense of stability and community among the staff who live and work together in close quarters for months at a time. About 3 months before his disappearance, according to some of his fellow crew members, his demeanor changed. He seemed nervous, distracted, looking over his shoulder. When friends asked if something was wrong, he would brush them off, saying he was just tired or stressed. But a few crew members reported that he had mentioned discovering something disturbing, though he never elaborated on what that was. One friend said he had talked about seeing something he wasn't supposed to see, some kind of violation of procedures or safety regulations. But he was vague about the details, and his friend didn't press him on it. Then, one night during a regular voyage, he simply didn't show up for his shift. This was unusual because he had always been punctual and professional. His supervisor tried to contact him but got no response. Security was called to check his crew cabin, which he shared with 3 other crew members. The cabin was empty, but his belongings were all there. His roommates said they hadn't seen him since the previous day. One of them mentioned that he had seemed agitated recently, but had refused to talk about why.
The ship's security launched an investigation, but it was handled very differently than when a passenger goes missing. Crew member disappearances are treated as internal matters first. There was no ship-wide announcement, no immediate search of all decks, no press release. Security reviewed camera footage and found him walking on one of the crew decks late at night, heading toward a restricted area. The footage showed him alone, walking with purpose. And then, like so many others in our stories, he vanished from camera coverage. The restricted area he had been walking toward was a section of the ship where crew members don't typically have access without specific authorization. It was near some of the ship's mechanical and operational systems. Security checked the area but found no sign of him. They checked crew logs to see if he had swiped his ID card to access any doors. There was no record of him accessing that restricted area or any other secured space. As the search continued quietly, some crew members started talking. Rumors spread that he had been involved in some kind of dispute with management. Others said he had witnessed something illegal, possibly drug smuggling or theft, and was planning to report it. A few claimed he had discovered safety violations that the ship was covering up. None of these rumors were confirmed, and ship management denied all of them. They maintained that he was simply a crew member who had gone missing, and that they were doing everything they could to find him. But the way the case was handled raised eyebrows. Unlike passenger disappearances, which trigger specific protocols and often involve Coast Guard notification and family communication, crew member cases can be more opaque. The missing man's family back in the Philippines wasn't notified for several days. When they were finally told, the information they received was minimal. They were told their son and brother had gone missing, that the ship was searching for him, but that there were no leads. His family tried to get more information, but they faced barriers, language barriers, bureaucratic barriers, corporate barriers. The cruise line had lawyers who dealt with such matters, and those lawyers were careful about what information was released. The family couldn't afford to fly to the United States to pursue the case in person. They felt helpless and frustrated, knowing that something had happened to their loved one, but unable to get straight answers about what happened. Weeks after the disappearance, a crew member who had been friends with the missing man came forward with a statement. He said his friend had confided in him about discovering financial irregularities in the ship's accounting, potentially involving kickbacks or theft of supplies. He said his friend had been gathering evidence and was planning to report it to corporate headquarters, but before he could do that, he disappeared. The crew member who came forward was soon transferred to a different ship, and when reporters tried to follow up with him, he declined to comment further. This added a sinister dimension to the case. Was this a simple disappearance, a crew member who fell overboard or harmed himself? Or was it something more deliberate? If he had discovered criminal activity or corruption and was threatening to expose it, could someone have silenced him? These kinds of questions are difficult to answer, especially in the closed world of cruise ship operations, where crew members are often vulnerable, far from home, dependent on their employers for their livelihood and legal status. Investigators from the ship's flag state, the country where the ship is registered, eventually got involved. But flag state investigations can be limited, especially when the ship is registered in a country with lax maritime regulations. Many cruise ships are registered in countries like Panama, the Bahamas, or Liberia, not because they operate primarily in those waters, but because those countries offer favorable tax and regulatory environments. This practice, known as using flags of convenience, can complicate criminal investigations and accountability. The investigation into the crew member's disappearance dragged on for months without resolution.
The ship continued operating its regular routes, with a new crew member filling the missing man's position. Life on the ship went on. Passengers boarded and disembarked, completely unaware that someone who worked on the ship had vanished without a trace. The cruise line's public relations team ensured that the story stayed out of major media outlets. It was treated as an unfortunate incident, but not a major scandal. For the missing man's family, the pain was compounded by the lack of closure. They didn't know if he was dead or alive. They didn't know if he had fallen overboard accidentally, if he had harmed himself, or if something more sinister had occurred. They held out hope for a while that maybe he had somehow survived, that maybe he had made it to shore and would contact them. But as time passed, that hope faded. One of the most disturbing aspects of this case is how it highlights the vulnerability of cruise ship workers. These are people who leave their families for months at a time to work long hours in demanding conditions. They live in small crew cabins in the bowels of ships, areas that passengers never see. They work for companies that often prioritize cost efficiency and passenger satisfaction over crew welfare. And when something happens to them, when they disappear or get injured or face abuse, their ability to seek justice or even answers can be severely limited. This case remains officially unsolved. The cruise line maintains that they conducted a thorough investigation and found no evidence of foul play. They suggest that the crew member likely went overboard, possibly by suicide given the stress he was reportedly under. But his family and some of his friends don't accept this explanation. They believe he was murdered to silence him, that he knew something that made him a liability, and that powerful people on that ship decided he needed to disappear. Without a body, without witnesses, without physical evidence, it's impossible to know the truth. And that's perhaps the most troubling aspect of cruise ship mysteries. The ships are isolated environments where traditional law enforcement and investigative procedures face unique challenges. Add in international waters, flag state complications, corporate interests,
and the transient nature of both passengers and crew, and you have a situation where finding the truth can be nearly impossible. The missing crew member story serves as a reminder that cruise ships aren't just vacation destinations for passengers. They're workplaces for thousands of people, and those people deserve safety, dignity, and justice just as much as anyone else. And when they disappear, they deserve more than a quiet internal investigation and a filing cabinet entry. They deserve answers. Our next case brings us back to passengers, but with a twist that makes it particularly puzzling. This time, we're dealing with a couple, both of whom disappeared, leading to theories that range from tragic accident to elaborate planning to something far more sinister. Mystery 6. The couple who planned to disappear. What happens when two people vanish together? Is it more likely to be a mutual decision, a joint tragedy, or a crime that involved both victims? Our sixth mystery centers on a middle-aged couple who disappeared from a cruise ship under circumstances that have led to wildly different theories about what really happened. The couple, both in their late 40s, had been married for 15 years. They lived in a suburban community on the East Coast where he worked as an accountant and she was a real estate agent. To neighbors and friends, they seemed like a normal, stable couple. They had no children, which they said was a choice they'd made early in their marriage. They took regular vacations and enjoyed traveling together. A cruise through the Panama Canal had been on their bucket list for years, and they finally booked it, choosing a 15-day voyage that would take them from one coast to the other. The first week of the cruise proceeded normally. The couple was seen at dinners, excursions, and onboard activities. They seemed to be enjoying themselves, though some passengers later reported that they often kept to themselves and weren't particularly social. They sat at a table for two at dinners rather than joining the communal seating. They tended to skip the big group activities in favor of quieter pursuits. But none of this seemed unusual or alarming. Plenty of couples use cruises as intimate getaways and prefer privacy. On the 8th day of the cruise, while the ship was transiting through the Panama Canal, a spectacular experience that most passengers spend hours on deck watching. The couple was nowhere to be seen. Initially, nobody noticed. The ship was full, and people were focused on the canal transit, taking photos and videos of the locks and the surrounding jungle. But by dinner time, when they didn't show up for their reservation at one of the ship's restaurants, the staff made a note. When they didn't appear the next day either and didn't respond to calls or messages, concern began to grow. Security went to their cabin and found the door locked. When they entered, they discovered something that immediately made this case different from a typical overboard scenario. The cabin had been thoroughly cleaned out. Both passengers' suitcases were gone. Their clothes were gone. Their toiletries were gone. The safe was open and empty. It looked like they had packed up and left, taking everything with them. But here's the problem. The ship's records showed that neither of them had disembarked at any port. Their keycards hadn't been used to exit the ship. This discovery shifted the investigation immediately. This wasn't a case of someone falling overboard or wandering off. This was something planned. Security reviewed camera footage extensively, going back several days. They found footage of the couple in their cabin, visible through the open door at times when stewards were cleaning nearby rooms. They were seen packing their belongings into their suitcases. This had been happening over several days, gradually, so as not to be obvious. The footage also showed something else. On the night before they were reported missing, around 2 a.m., when the ship was in the middle of the canal transit, the couple was seen leaving their cabin with their luggage. They walked through hallways, took an elevator, and headed toward one of the lower decks. This was unusual because passengers aren't typically allowed on lower decks, especially in the middle of the night. But the couple seemed to know where they were going. They weren't hesitant or lost. They moved with purpose. The cameras tracked them to a restricted area, and then coverage ended. This area was near the gangway doors, the large doors that open when the ship is docked to allow passengers to embark and disembark. During the canal transit, these doors would have been closed and locked. So what were the couple doing there, and how did they plan to leave the ship when it wasn't docked? Investigators considered several scenarios. The first was that the couple had somehow managed to exit the ship during the canal transit, perhaps by bribing a crew member or exploiting a security gap. The Panama Canal has pilot boats and service vessels that come alongside cruise ships during the transit to embark and disembark the canal pilots who guide ships through the canal. Could the couple have gotten onto one of those boats? It would have required planning, insider knowledge, and likely cooperation from someone on the ship or in the Canal Authority. This theory led to an investigation into the couple's background and finances. And this is where things got very interesting. Investigators discovered that the couple was in significant financial trouble. The husband's accounting business was failing, and he was being investigated for possible embezzlement of client funds. The wife's real estate income had dried up during a market downturn. They had maxed out multiple credit cards and were behind on their mortgage. They were facing potential bankruptcy and possibly criminal charges. With this information, investigators developed a theory. The couple had planned to disappear, to fake their own deaths, and start new lives elsewhere. They had researched how to do it, had gathered resources, and had chosen a cruise through the Panama Canal as their exit strategy. Panama has relatively lax banking laws and has been used historically as a place where people can disappear or hide assets. If they could get off the ship in Panama without being recorded as disembarking, they could potentially vanish. But how did they actually get off the ship? This is where the investigation hit a wall. Despite extensive interviews and document reviews, nobody could figure out the logistics. The pilot boats that service the canal are small and are monitored. It would be difficult to hide two people with luggage. The ship's crew insisted that no gangway had been opened during the canal transit. Security protocols were reviewed and appeared to have been followed. Another theory emerged. Maybe they hadn't gotten off the ship in the canal at all. Maybe they were still on the ship, hiding. Large cruise ships have thousands of spaces, including areas that are rarely accessed. Could they have found a hiding spot where they could stay undetected for the remainder of the voyage? This theory led to another extensive search of the ship, even more thorough than the first. Canine units were brought on board. Thermal imaging equipment was used. Every storage room, every mechanical space, every possible hiding place was checked. The couple was not on the ship. A third theory was far darker. Maybe they hadn't planned to disappear together. Maybe one of them had killed the other, disposed of the body, and then taken both sets of luggage to make it look like they had both left voluntarily. Then the perpetrator had somehow gotten off the ship or was hiding on it. This theory was investigated thoroughly too. The couple's marriage was scrutinized. Friends and family were interviewed about their relationship. Financial records were examined to see if one spouse had more to gain from the other's death than from a joint disappearance. The interviews revealed that while the couple appeared stable on the surface, there had been tensions. The husband's potential legal troubles were a source of stress. Some friends said the wife had mentioned being worried about being implicated in her husband's financial schemes. There were whispers that maybe she had been planning to leave him and that the cruise was a last attempt to save the marriage. But these were just rumors and speculation. Nobody had any concrete evidence of violence or foul play. As the investigation expanded internationally, authorities in Panama were contacted. They reviewed their records for any sign of the couple entering the country unofficially. They checked hospitals, morgues, hotels, and transportation hubs. They alerted border authorities in neighboring countries. Despite all this effort, there was no trace of the couple anywhere. It was as if they had evaporated.
The families of the missing couple had conflicting reactions. The husband's family insisted he would never abandon his parents and siblings without a word. They believed something terrible had happened, possibly a murder-suicide or an accident where both fell overboard. The wife's family was less certain. Her sister mentioned that the wife had talked occasionally about starting over, about how nice it would be to just leave everything behind and begin fresh somewhere. Could she have convinced her husband to go along with the plan to disappear? The financial investigation provided some intriguing clues. In the months before the cruise, the couple had liquidated several assets in ways that raised red flags. They had sold a vacation property and claimed the money would go toward paying down debt, but the full amount was never deposited in their known accounts. They had withdrawn cash in amounts just under the reporting threshold. The husband had transferred funds from his business accounts in ways that made tracking difficult. If they were planning to disappear, they were setting up the financial means to do so. But even with all of this circumstantial evidence, investigators couldn't definitively prove the disappearance was planned. They couldn't explain how the couple got off the ship without being detected. They couldn't trace them to any location after the cruise. They couldn't find any evidence that either was still alive or that both were dead. The case remained a complete mystery. Years have passed since the disappearance, and there has been no resolution. No bodies have been found, no credible sightings have been reported, the couple's bank accounts have never been accessed again, their credit cards have never been used, their family members have received no contact. In legal terms, they are missing persons, presumed dead, though no death certificates have been issued because there's no proof of death. This case is frustrating because it feels like there should be answers. Unlike disappearances where someone walks on deck and is never seen again, this case involved planning, luggage, and movement through the ship that was captured on camera. There are clues, there are leads, but somehow all of them dead end into mystery. Where did they go? How did they leave? Are they living under assumed names somewhere, laughing at everyone searching for them? Or did something go wrong with their plan, leaving them dead in circumstances that have never been discovered? The cruise line eventually settled with the couple's families in civil lawsuits, not admitting fault but acknowledging that two passengers had disappeared on their ship without explanation. The settlements included non-disclosure agreements, so the families can't publicly discuss the details of what they learned during discovery. This has only fueled more speculation and conspiracy theories. The case of the disappearing couple remains one of the most perplexing cruise ship mysteries because it exists in a space between intentional disappearance and foul play. It's possible that they succeeded in their plan and are somewhere living new lives. It's possible that they tried to disappear but something went horribly wrong. It's possible that one killed the other and then disappeared or committed suicide. Without bodies, without sightings, without any concrete evidence of what happened after they walked into that camera blind spot with their luggage, we may never know the truth. And that brings us to our seventh and final mystery, a case that's the most recent and the most unsettling because it involves technology that should have prevented a disappearance but somehow didn't. Mystery 7, the tracked passenger.
Modern cruise ships are technological marvels. They have GPS, satellite communications, sophisticated surveillance systems, and in recent years, many have implemented passenger tracking technology. Passengers are given wearable devices or key cards with chips that allow the ship to know where they are at all times. This technology was supposed to make disappearances impossible. But our seventh and final mystery proves that even with all this technology, people can still vanish without explanation. The victim in this case was a 55-year-old woman traveling alone on a Mediterranean cruise. She was a successful businesswoman, a motivational speaker who traveled frequently for work. She was experienced, confident, and excited about her trip, which she was taking as a solo vacation between speaking engagements in Europe. She had posted on social media about how much she was looking forward to some relaxation and time to work on her upcoming book. The ship she was on was brand new, one of the most advanced cruise ships ever built. It had all the latest technology, including medallions that passengers wore on lanyards or wristbands. These medallions were linked to each passenger's account and served multiple purposes. They were your room key, your payment method, your boarding pass, and your tracking device. The ship's computer system knew where every passenger was at all times. The technology was marketed as a convenience and a safety feature. For the first 4 days of the cruise, the system showed the woman's normal patterns of movement. She went to breakfast in the buffet each morning. She attended a yoga class on the pool deck. She spent time in her cabin, presumably working on her book. She had dinner at various restaurants. She attended shows in the theater. Her movements were tracked and recorded, creating a digital map of her daily routine. Everything seemed perfectly normal. On the 5th day, while the ship was docked in Barcelona, the woman went to shore for a shore excursion. The system tracked her leaving the ship at 9 a.m. She returned at 4 p.m., well before the ship was scheduled to depart at 6. The system recorded her coming back on board. She went to her cabin, and for the next few hours her medallion showed her as being in her cabin. Then, at 11 p.m., the system showed her leaving her cabin and going up to one of the upper decks. According to the data from her medallion, she spent about 30 minutes on the upper deck. This wasn't unusual. Many passengers like to go out on deck at night to see the stars or watch the ship sail. But then, at 11:32 p.m., her medallion signal disappeared. One moment the system was tracking her location, the next moment the signal was gone. It was as if she had ceased to exist. When a medallion signal disappears, it triggers an alert in the ship's security system. Someone is supposed to investigate immediately. But on this particular night, for reasons that became a source of controversy later, the alert was not responded to immediately. Security officers later claimed that medallion signals sometimes glitch, especially on upper decks where the metal structure of the ship can interfere with the radio frequency. They said they logged the alert but didn't treat it as an emergency because passengers often removed their medallions, especially at night. It wasn't until the next morning, when the woman failed to show up for a shore excursion she had booked and paid for, that concerns were raised. The excursion coordinator tried to contact her. No response. Security went to her cabin and found it empty. Her belongings were there, including her phone, which was unusual for someone going on a shore excursion. They checked the medallion system and saw that her last tracked location had been the upper deck the previous night, and then nothing. Security reviewed camera footage from the upper deck where she had last been tracked. The cameras showed her walking along the railing, looking out at the sea. She appeared to be alone. She stood at the railing for several minutes, and then, in footage that has been analyzed by countless experts since, she appeared to climb onto the railing and, after a brief pause, drop out of frame. The footage was grainy because it was nighttime and the deck lighting wasn't bright, but it appeared to show a suicide. Case closed, right? A tragic suicide. Except the woman's family refused to accept this explanation. They pointed out multiple inconsistencies and troubling facts. First, she had no history of depression or mental illness. She had been posting cheerfully on social media just hours before her disappearance. She had speaking engagements scheduled for after the cruise that she was looking forward to. She had been working on a book that was nearly finished and that she was excited to publish. She had signed a lucrative contract for a speaking tour. She had everything to live for.
Second, the family questioned the video footage. They hired video forensics experts who analyzed the footage and raised questions about whether it had been altered or whether what appeared to be someone climbing the railing might have been something else. The footage was not clear enough to definitively show what happened. You could see a figure at the railing, but the exact actions were ambiguous. Was she climbing over, or was she leaning far out looking at something? Was she alone, or could there have been someone else just out of frame? Third, and most troubling, was the question of the medallion. If she had jumped or fallen overboard, what happened to her medallion? These devices are designed to be waterproof and to float. If she had gone into the water wearing it, it should have continued transmitting a signal, at least for a while. The Coast Guard could have used that signal to locate her body. But her medallion never transmitted another signal after disappearing on the deck that night. It was as if it had been destroyed or removed. The family's attorney hired investigators who raised another possibility. What if the woman had been attacked on the deck? What if someone had removed her medallion to make it appear she had disappeared, then either thrown her overboard or hidden her body somewhere on the ship? This theory led to questions about who else was on that deck around the same time. The medallion system should have tracked other passengers in the area, but when the family requested this data, the cruise line was reluctant to provide it, citing privacy concerns. Eventually, through legal pressure, some data was released. It showed that at least 3 other passengers had been on or near that deck around the time the woman disappeared. The cruise line argued that this wasn't unusual, that people are always moving around the ship. But the family wanted to know who these people were and whether they had been questioned. The cruise line maintained that security had done a thorough investigation and found no evidence of foul play. One of the 3 passengers whose medallion placed them near the scene was a crew member who was off duty. When questioned, he said he had gone up to that deck to have a cigarette, which was allowed in certain areas. He said he didn't see the woman or anyone else. He finished his cigarette and went back below decks. His story was corroborated by the timing of his medallion movements, which showed him on the deck for about 10 minutes and then returning to crew areas. Another passenger was a woman who said she had gone up to get some air because she was feeling seasick. She also claimed not to have seen anyone else on the deck. The third passenger was a man who initially couldn't be identified because he had requested privacy settings on his medallion tracking, something the cruise line offered to passengers who were uncomfortable with constant tracking. When investigators finally identified and interviewed him, he said he had been looking for his wife, who he thought might have gone up to the deck, and that he had been there only briefly. None of these stories could be definitively disproven, but none of them could be conclusively verified either. And the fact that 3 people had been in the area when the woman disappeared, yet none of them saw her or reported anything unusual, struck the family as suspicious. Were they all telling the truth? Was it possible that one of them was involved? The investigations focused on the off-duty crew member for a while because he had the most familiarity with the ship and might have known how to avoid cameras or disable a medallion, but there was no physical evidence linking him to the woman. He had no apparent motive. He passed a polygraph test, though those aren't always reliable. The family also raised questions about the ship's response time. Why had security not responded immediately when the medallion signal disappeared? If someone had investigated right away, within minutes instead of hours, might they have found evidence of what happened? Might they have even saved her if she was still alive somewhere? The cruise line's explanation that medallion signal losses weren't treated as emergencies seemed inadequate given that the system was supposed to be a safety feature. An independent safety expert hired by the family pointed out a troubling possibility. If someone wanted to attack a passenger on a cruise ship, one of the first things they might do is remove or destroy the victim's medallion to avoid being tracked near the crime scene. The fact that the woman's medallion signal disappeared right before she vanished could indicate that someone deliberately disabled it. But the cruise line countered that if she was committing suicide, she might have removed the medallion herself, perhaps throwing it into the ocean before jumping. This case sparked a broader debate about cruise ship technology and safety. If we have systems that track every passenger, why are people still disappearing? If we have cameras everywhere, why can't we definitively say what happened? The answer is the technology has limits. Cameras have blind spots. Medallion systems can be removed or malfunction. And, most importantly, technology doesn't prevent human actions, whether those actions are self-harm or violence from others. The official investigation concluded that the woman most likely committed suicide by jumping from the upper deck. The case was closed, but her family has never accepted this conclusion. They continue to believe that something more sinister happened, that she was murdered, and that the circumstances were made to look like suicide. They filed lawsuits against the cruise line, not necessarily expecting to win, but hoping to keep pressure on the company to release more information and to improve safety protocols. The woman's body has never been recovered. The ocean where she supposedly entered the water is deep and trafficked by strong currents. If she did go overboard, her remains could be anywhere, likely lost forever. But without a body, without a clear explanation for all the inconsistencies, and with a family that refuses to stop asking questions, this case remains, like all the others we've discussed today, an unsolved mystery. The seventh case is particularly frustrating because it feels like the technology should have provided answers. We know where she was, we know when her signal disappeared, we have video that supposedly shows what happened, and yet we still don't know for certain whether this was a suicide, an accident, or a murder made to look like something else. It's a reminder that even in our modern age of surveillance and tracking, mysteries can still exist. People can still vanish, and the truth can still be elusive. So, there you have it. 7 unsolved cruise ship mysteries. 7 people who boarded ships expecting vacation and adventure and who never made it home. 7 families still searching for answers. 7 cases that remain open. Cold, but not forgotten. What did these cases tell us? First, they remind us that cruise ships, despite being marketed as safe and controlled environments, have unique vulnerabilities. The combination of international waters, complicated jurisdictions, corporate interests, and the sheer scale and complexity of these floating cities creates an environment where investigations can be difficult and accountability can be unclear. Second, these cases highlight the limits of technology and security. We can have cameras and tracking devices and security personnel, but gaps still exist, blind spots still exist. And human behavior, whether it's criminal intent or tragic impulse, can't always be prevented by technology. Third, these mysteries underscore the power and mystery of the ocean itself. The sea is vast, deep, and unforgiving. It keeps secrets. It doesn't give up its dead easily. When someone goes into the ocean, the chances of recovery are often slim to none, and that makes closure for families extremely difficult. Should these stories make you afraid to go on a cruise? That's for you to decide. Statistically, cruises are very safe. Millions of people take cruises every year without incident. The cases we've discussed today represent a tiny fraction of cruise passengers, but they do serve as a reminder to stay aware, to use buddy systems, to keep your medallion or tracker on, to avoid isolated areas, especially at night, and to trust your instincts if something feels wrong. For the families of those who have disappeared, these aren't just interesting stories or unsolved mysteries. They're ongoing nightmares. The not knowing is perhaps the worst part. Is their loved one dead or alive? Did they suffer? Could their disappearance have been prevented? These questions haunt them every day, and while the rest of the world moves on, they're stuck in a moment of uncertainty and grief that never ends.
If you found this video interesting and want to see more content about unsolved mysteries, true crime, and unexplained phenomena, make sure to subscribe to the channel and hit that notification bell. Leave a comment below and let me know which of these 7 cases you found most disturbing or which one you think has the most likely explanation. I read every comment and love hearing your thoughts and theories. Also, if you have any suggestions for future videos or topics you'd like me to cover, drop those in the comments as well. There are so many mysteries out there waiting to be explored, and your input helps guide what we investigate next. Thank you so much for watching. Stay safe out there, especially if you're planning a cruise anytime soon. And remember, the ocean is beautiful and awe-inspiring, but it's also powerful and unpredictable. Respect it, and maybe, just maybe, stick to the interior hallways at night. Until next time, keep questioning, keep wondering, and never stop searching for the truth.